I've just returned from an extraordinary encounter with Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. It was her first Australian interview in 8 years, so I was looking forward to our meeting. But as I soon discovered, the Duchess has two very different sides.
Sarah Ferguson's glittering world of charm and charity has just collided with financial chaos. Reports suggest the Duchess's lavish spending sprees, private feasts, and even a bizarre Bitcoin mining venture in Nevada have spiraled into crisis. Now, close friends are stunned, insiders whisper betrayal, and the palace is quietly alarmed. Because this time, Fergie's fortune hasn't just vanished. It may expose a royal secret the crown never wanted revealed. So, was it reckless indulgence, bad advice, or something far darker behind her mounting debts? The Duchess who mistook fantasy for fortune. Before the diamonds, the photo calls, and the royal fanfare, Sarah Ferguson's world was remarkably simple. She has often spoken candidly about her early years, cleaning chalets in Switzerland, scrubbing toilets, and serving pastries in a small strudel cafe. There was no hint then that this cheerful, flame-haired young woman would one day marry a prince. Yet in July 1986, she did exactly that. Her wedding to Prince Andrew, the Queen's second son, was a televised fairy tale, the kind that promised glamour, privilege, and endless wealth. But behind the smiles and pageantry, that dream was already cracked. Insiders later revealed that Fergie entered the royal fold with a fatal misconception. She believed that marrying a prince meant automatic riches. What she didn't know was that the Duke and Duchess of York were often short of cash, and that the royal family does not fund private indulgences. The fantasy of effortless luxury began to unravel almost immediately. Soon after her wedding, Sarah took a first-class flight home from New York. Her arrival made headlines, not for her charm, but for her luggage. Over 50 suitcases were checked in, filled with £33,000 worth of shopping, including a single teddy bear that cost £515. The excess baggage fine alone was close to £1,000, a staggering sum for the 1980s. Even the Heathrow staff couldn't believe it. One baggage handler reportedly remarked, "Not even Joan Collins has this much." Palace aides, meanwhile, were horrified. The royal household refused to confirm who paid the bill, but whispers spread quickly. The new Duchess was out of control. That moment, extravagant as it seemed, was just the beginning. Over the years, Sarah became infamous for her appetite for luxury. Staff recalled her arriving for trips with up to 25 suitcases, sometimes paying between £800 and £4,000 in excess baggage fees, just to transport her belongings. She was said to pack entire trunks only for her hangers. Behind closed doors, insiders described her lifestyle as extravagant to the extreme. Meals at the Yorks' residence were the stuff of legend. Former employees claimed that every evening she demanded a full feast, a whole side of beef, a leg of lamb, and a roasted chicken, as if dining in a medieval hall. Her annual spending reportedly reached an astonishing £860,000. That included £150,000 on gifts, £50,000 on flowers, and another £50,000 on entertaining alone. Her circle of personal trainers, hairdressers, and Pilates instructors waited for hours, charging hundreds per session. As debts mounted, her reputation within royal circles darkened. Commentators described her as a woman caught between charm and chaos, with a hopeless grasp of money and an endless hunger for more of it. And could Sarah Ferguson's endless luxury and reckless spending finally cost her everything? Or is another shocking comeback waiting just beyond the horizon? Stay with us. The Duchess and the Desert Mirage. By the early 1990s, the fairy tale had all but vanished. Behind the smiling photo calls and public appearances, Sarah Ferguson's debts had reached crisis point. She reportedly owed an astonishing £4 million to Coutts Bank. one of Britain's most exclusive financial institutions, where even the wealthy tread carefully. For the Duchess of York, it marked the beginning of a long, painful descent from privilege into financial turmoil. When her marriage to Prince Andrew finally collapsed in 1996, her finances unraveled with it. But rather than retreating into a quieter, simpler life, Sarah refused to scale down her lifestyle. Those who knew her at the time said she could not imagine living without the trappings of luxury: the grand homes, the designer wardrobes, the endless staff. Instead, she leaned heavily on Andrew, both emotionally and financially. Their connection, though no longer romantic, became something more complex. And, as writer Tina Brown described it, a destructive mutual reliance. When Fergie's debts threatened to bury her, Andrew bailed her out. When scandals clouded his reputation, she stood publicly by him. They were, in many ways, each other's last line of defense. But that strange royal arrangement couldn't last forever. When King Charles took the throne and moved to distance the monarchy from controversy, he stripped Andrew of his remaining royal titles and urged the pair to vacate Royal Lodge, their longtime residence in Windsor. Suddenly, the safety net that had protected Sarah for decades was gone. Faced with dwindling funds and few real opportunities, Sarah turned, once again, to the world of business. And just when it seemed she might have learned from her past, she plunged into one of her most disastrous ventures yet: cryptocurrency. In 2019, a company called Pegasus Group Holdings unveiled what sounded like a futuristic dream: a £3 billion plan to build a vast, solar-powered Bitcoin mining complex in Mojave County, Arizona. They called it the Hive, a name meant to symbolize innovation and sustainability. As part of the launch, Pegasus brought on an unlikely ambassador, Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York. In her statement, she praised the company's visionary leadership and said she was thrilled to join their forthcoming adventure. For her involvement, she reportedly earned £200,000 up front, with the promise of a £1.2 million bonus if the project succeeded. But success never came. Pegasus collapsed amid a flurry of lawsuits and fraud allegations. Investors accused executives of siphoning funds for personal use and failing to construct a single data center. By 2023, an arbitration tribunal ordered the company to pay $2.5 million in damages. And by 2024, new lawsuits claimed Pegasus had raised money with no real intention of operating a legitimate business. Once again, Sarah Ferguson's name was entangled in financial chaos, another example of poor judgment and unfortunate associations. Around the same time, she quietly sold her Belgravia townhouse at a loss, dropping from £4.25 million to £3.85 million in just 3 years. Her representatives insisted it was an investment for her daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie. But critics saw the familiar pattern: lavish spending, bad deals, and a tendency to trade on the fading glow of royal glamour. Only now that glow was beginning to fade, and the shadow it left behind was darker than ever. Now, what do you think pushed Sarah Ferguson from royal glamour to repeated financial disaster? Was it luck, ambition, or something far more dangerous? Keep watching. The Fall of the Duchess of Excess. The Duchess, who once floated between glamour and chaos, now stands at the edge of her own undoing. Sarah Ferguson's empire of extravagance, built on charm, celebrity, and endless second chances, has finally begun to collapse under its own weight. The woman who once demanded entire roasts and banquets, fit for a medieval court, now faces the quiet reckoning of a lifetime of reckless spending. The grand estates, the lavish parties, the designer wardrobes, all of it has faded, leaving behind debts, strained relationships, and a trail of broken ventures. After losing her royal residence, Royal Lodge, and watching her financial lifelines disappear, Fergie finds herself once again in the harsh glare of public scrutiny. To many inside the palace, her downfall seemed inevitable. One royal insider put it bluntly. She was a crushing spendthrift married to a cheapskate who had far less money than she thought, and she never recovered from that reality. That single observation, cold as it may sound, captures the tragedy of Sarah Ferguson's financial life, a woman who mistook proximity to royalty for a ticket to endless fortune. For decades, Sarah has battled the same ghost, herself. Every time she seemed on the verge of redemption, through charity work, emotional interviews, or fresh business ideas, she would stumble right back into the same traps of impulsiveness and bad judgment. Her post-royal career reads like a catalog of contradictions, from diet plans and self-help books to wellness brands and lifestyle endorsements. Each project began with enthusiasm and ended with confusion, lawsuits, or quiet embarrassment. At one point, she launched a product line that promised to energize the soul. Another time, she endorsed a weight loss program while openly admitting she rarely followed it. There were candles, teas, and self-branded wellness items, all marketed under the soft glow of royal nostalgia. But behind the curtain, critics saw something more desperate, an endless attempt to turn her fading fame into profit. It wasn't passion that drove her ventures, it was survival. Those who worked with her noticed a familiar pattern: grand promises, lavish marketing, and little follow-through. She was constantly reinventing herself, shifting from Duchess to motivational speaker, from entrepreneur to brand ambassador, never quite finding solid ground. One royal biographer once joked that Fergie would endorse a fridge magnet if the check cleared. It was a cruel line, perhaps, but painfully accurate. Each new scheme carried the same hope, that this time she'd make it work. This time she'd restore her image and reclaim her independence. But with every misstep, her credibility eroded further. The Duchess of York, once adored for her warmth and irreverence, had become a cautionary tale of how fame, when mismanaged, can turn from fortune to ruin. And yet, beneath the layers of financial chaos, public scrutiny, and repeated scandals, one question continues to haunt observers. Has Sarah Ferguson finally reached her breaking point? Or is this merely another pause before her next reinvention? For decades, she has risen from one misstep to another, constantly reinventing herself through charity, media appearances, wellness ventures, books, and endorsements, each time crafting a new version of the Duchess that the public could admire, pity, or follow. Even in moments of scandal, she has found ways to return to the spotlight, often riding the wave of sympathy, fascination, or sheer audacity. But after losing Royal Lodge, seeing her brand deals collapse, and being repeatedly tied to failed investments and controversial figures, the question is pressing. Can Fergie summon the resilience and ingenuity that have defined her past? Or is the weight of decades of misjudgment finally catching up with the woman who has always refused to fade quietly? But can Sarah Ferguson rise once more from scandal and loss? Or has her long-running luck finally run out? Stay tuned. The price of desperation. But before the candles, the diet plans, and the crumbling ventures came the scandal that shattered whatever dignity Sarah Ferguson still had left, the one that would forever stain her public image. It was 2010, and in an age where royal discretion still carried weight, a hidden camera captured something unthinkable. The Duchess of York, seated casually with a man she believed to be a wealthy businessman, offering access to her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, for a £500,000 fee. Her words were damning. "That opens up everything you would ever wish for," she promised with a nervous smile, unaware that every moment was being recorded. When the footage went public, the world reacted with disbelief. The video spread across global news networks, dominating headlines and late-night talk shows. Here was the former Duchess, once welcomed into Buckingham Palace as a royal bride, now caught appearing to sell introductions to the Queen's son like a door-to-door broker. Her defense came swiftly but shakily. Appearing on Oprah Winfrey's sofa days later, she wept, claiming she had been desperate and drunk, a woman cornered by years of financial pressure and poor decisions. She spoke of regret, humiliation, and the deep hole of debt that had pushed her to the edge. Yet for the royal family, the damage was irreparable. No apology could erase the image of a duchess bartering her royal connection for cash. The palace closed ranks, distancing itself from her completely. In that moment, Fergie's already fragile credibility collapsed into scandalous infamy. And yet, somehow she couldn't walk away from the spotlight. For Sarah, fame wasn't a curse. It was oxygen. She admitted once that she loved the thrill of public attention, that being seen made her feel alive. Even after years of humiliation, she continued to chase it with reckless abandon. Red carpets, reality television, interviews, and talk show appearances became her second home. No matter how much she stumbled, she always found her way back before a camera, smiling as though nothing had happened. Behind that grin, however, insiders say, there was always an undertone of insecurity, a need to prove herself worthy of the life she lost. Many within royal circles believed she lived in the long, unshakable shadow of Princess Diana. The comparisons were constant and cruel. Diana, the nation's beloved people's princess, remained adored even after her tragic death, while Fergie became a punchline in the tabloids. That contrast haunted her. When she tried to rebuild her image through writing, releasing children's books, memoirs, and self-help titles, critics accused her of exploiting the royal link all over again. What she framed as resilience, others saw as opportunism.
Open and brutally honest about her failings. And then there's Bad Fergie, her description, not mine, who makes bad judgments and lands herself in scandal time after time. We'd agreed none of that was off limits in our interview.
To her supporters, she was misunderstood, a woman trying to stand on her own after being crushed by fame. But to those who worked closely with her, a different portrait emerged, one of impulsiveness, extravagance, and self-sabotage. She could go from charming to impossible in seconds, a former staff member recalled. And through every scandal, every apology, and every failed reinvention, one question has always lingered in the air. Was Sarah Ferguson a victim of circumstance, or the architect of her own downfall? And could Sarah Ferguson's relentless chase for luxury and fame be survival? Or has she been building her own downfall all along? Stay glued. The Duchess who couldn't let go. Even after the cameras dimmed and the royal invitations stopped coming, Sarah Ferguson's appetite for luxury never truly faded. She often spoke of being broke, yet somehow continued to appear at exclusive parties, dressed in couture, photographed beside the same circles of wealth and celebrity that once defined her royal life. It was a contradiction too glaring to ignore. Royal experts say her pattern has remained unchanged for decades. Charm the rich, secure the deal, burn the bridge, and then reinvent herself before the dust settles. Every time one version of Fergie collapses, another one rises from the ashes. Slightly rebranded, slightly reworded, but always unmistakably her. In recent years, she has crafted a new identity, the modern survivor. With podcasts, social media posts, and carefully curated interviews, she now speaks in the language of resilience, self-worth, and positivity. She presents herself as a woman who has faced every possible humiliation and come out wiser, stronger, and more grateful. But beneath the motivational quotes and public smiles, there's an unmistakable tension. The irony of a woman preaching discipline and healing while her finances remain in shambles. Lately, her public story has shifted again, this time around her battle with cancer. The diagnosis brought sympathy from both fans and critics alike, a rare moment of public empathy after years of scandal. Many admired her openness in discussing her treatment and recovery, seeing courage where once there had been chaos. But others quietly wondered if, yet again, she had found a way to turn personal pain into public narrative. Another chapter in a long-running effort to stay relevant, visible, and profitable. And then, as always, the question returns: how does she continue to afford it all? Despite decades of debt, unpaid loans, and failed business ventures, Sarah Ferguson still manages to live in comfort. In one particularly revealing interview, when pressed about accepting a $40,000 payment during a past scandal, she admitted she took the money but claimed she returned it as soon as she knew it was a scandal. The exchange captured the heart of her story. The constant dance between desperation and denial, between guilt and justification. Insiders whisper that wealthy friends still quietly fund her lifestyle, offering financial help behind closed doors. Others suggest she's planning one final, explosive comeback, a tell-all memoir that could expose private royal details for a lucrative advance. The temptation, after years of financial ruin, may simply be too strong to resist. Yet, despite it all, the disgrace, the headlines, the financial wreckage, Sarah Ferguson always finds a way to stay in the public eye. Each time the world counts her out, she reappears, defiant and smiling, armed with a new story to tell. But with the loss of Royal Lodge, her brand deals drying up, and public sympathy wearing thin, this latest reinvention might be her last. As one former royal aide once put it, Sarah's greatest love has never been Andrew. It's been the lifestyle, and she'll do almost anything to keep it. Her downfall was not a single dramatic collapse, but a slow, relentless unraveling that spanned decades. Each lavish purchase, every impulsive investment, and every high-profile association chipped away at her reputation. One extravagant shopping spree, one questionable business deal, one ill-timed public apology after a scandal. Each seemed small in isolation, yet together they wove a pattern of financial misjudgment and public embarrassment. Her charm and resilience could carry her only so far, and over time, the consequences of repeated missteps compounded. What remained was a life defined by both glamour and cautionary tales, a decades-long descent into turmoil. And what drove Sarah Ferguson to risk everything for luxury and influence? Obsession, desperation, or something even more dangerous? The debt that wouldn't die. And yet, as her world began to tilt once more, one advisor who had stood by her through years of chaos summed it up bluntly. Every failure was just another chance to start over, as long as someone else paid the bill. It was a harsh truth Sarah Ferguson had lived by for decades. That same pattern would lead her straight into the most damaging association of her life. Because the next person to step in, the next man to help, wasn't a banker, an agent, or even a friend of the royal family. It was Jeffrey Epstein. The name alone would soon send shockwaves through the monarchy.
The Duchess of York has been removed as a patron of a children's hospice following her email correspondence with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The charity Julia's House says it would be inappropriate for the Duchess to continue.
That year was meant to mark Sarah's return, a fresh start after a series of humiliations. She had planned charity events, public appearances, and a cautious reintroduction into royal circles. But before the year was over, her reputation had collapsed once again. The sting of that infamous hidden camera scandal, where she was caught offering access to Prince Andrew for money, was still burning across the tabloids when a new headline detonated like a thunderclap. Fergie took money from Epstein. It was a revelation that stunned even her most loyal defenders. Emails surfaced showing that the Duchess of York had accepted a payment from the disgraced financier to help cover her personal debts. The figure publicly admitted was £15,000. But inside the newsrooms, whispers spread of something far larger. Some claimed it was closer to $2 million. Others hinted it wasn't just about the money at all. Neither of them dealt in small numbers, said one journalist who followed the trail for months. It was never about a single check. It was about access, about introductions, about power. The palace, already rattled by her earlier scandals, went into quiet panic. Every connection, every email, every whispered meeting began to look like a potential threat. Epstein was no ordinary financier. His name carried a darkness that would, in time, engulf far more than just Sarah Ferguson. But in that moment, it was her credibility, already hanging by a thread, that took the direct hit. When questioned by reporters, she tried to control the narrative. Calm but visibly shaken, she admitted she had accepted the money, insisted she had repaid it, and said she was deeply sorry. But the damage was irreversible. To the public, it wasn't about the exact sum. It was about judgment. It was about how far desperation had driven her. Those who knew her best said she had always believed she could charm her way out of anything, that no door was ever truly closed if she smiled at the right person. But this time, charm wasn't enough. The association with Epstein wasn't just scandalous, it was toxic. It clung to her name like a shadow she could never quite escape. And beneath it all lingered the question no one could ignore. How had she fallen so low, and why did she always find herself drawn to the same kind of danger, the same kind of men, the same kind of deals? Because in Sarah Ferguson's world, salvation and scandal were never far apart, and every rescue came with a price she would one day have to pay. So, what do you think drove Sarah Ferguson to risk it all? Was it lavish debts, scandalous deals, and dangerous connections? And could she rise again from the ashes? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.